Quality time. Uh, Quality time. Quality time. Quality time. Every Monday on the line. I don't bring the facts tonight. So the people read between the lines. Run live. Everybody tune in live. Global topics, deep analysis. Audience interaction every night. I lump on the live stream shop. Breaking down the news and the world affairs part. From the islands to the White House, every headline get dissected right now. No noise, no gimmick talk. Pure facts when Alan start walk. Economics, politics too. Caribbean lens on the global view. Shot a light up non-stop. Viewers calling, comments drop. Everybody got a voice tonight. Reasoning deep till the morning light. We not follow every trend. We are search the truth again. Real analytics, no pretend. Quality time, so the standard again. Quality time every Monday night. I'll keep the people minds ignite. Live reaction, facts inside. Rain keep the conversation bright. Quality time every Monday night. From the Caribbean to worldwide. Come and share, interact live. Everybody on the stream tonight. Them attacking war and trade. All I'm break it down so the truth get displayed. Stock market rise and fall. How it really affect the small man now. When the leaders make decisions, Alan, watch close with precision. Deep analysis every week. Giving voices to the ones who see. Audience calling from abroad. Nevis, St. Kitts, London Yard, Florida, Jamaica to everybody locked in for the global view. Reason with the people now. Search for the answers somehow. Every Monday we unite. Knowledge shining through the night. Rain keep the fire blaze. Conversation elevate. Alan lead the dialogue. Breaking down the money. Quality time every Monday night. Alan keep the people minds ignite. Live reactions, facts inside. Rain keep the conversation bright. Quality time every Monday night. From the Caribbean to worldwide eye. Come and share, interact live. Everybody on the stream tonight. Quality time.
Well, look how we start off on time tonight. Good night, everybody. America just had its 250th birthday. It was wonderful. 4th of July is a wonderful holiday. Hope everybody's doing well at the start of July. Hope everybody had a good mango fest. Yesterday, I did not see the the value. It been look kind of late to me, but nonetheless, the energy been good, and it. I would as well. I heard people say that it was a wonderful affair. Didn't have any violence and so there are things to like about what occurred at that time. Uh, I want to start off and give the government right now some props. I would have gone onto the new website. I like the layout. I like certain things about it, and there are some questions. I can't even say it's a problem yet. I just hope that it has the same content without just being like a whole fresh new thing. One thing I would like to, one question I had, one thing I've been not even really concerned about. It's just kind of puzzling for the last few weeks. I've been looking into this diaspora unit. As of now, I have not heard anybody give me a address for the diaspora unit. Like I can't get anybody to take a picture and say this is the unit, and I could see the like the nameplate and all these type of thing. I cannot find that as of yet. Uh, One thing I did see on the new website is the 2026 budget. And when I type into the 2026 budget the word diaspora, I am not seeing anything come back either. Even when you look on the new website, and we must say it is a brand new website, I think it is less than a month old, and it breaks down for you ministry. It tell you what departments in the ministry, and it also tell you what units under the ministry. I don't know if it's in the departments or just under the ministry itself. When you go to all of that, I cannot find diaspora unit anywhere. The reason why I'm interested in this is because by where they for me Japan and you tell me I can hear me. The reason why I am interested in this is because of course recently we had the premier travel to New York to spend some time with the diaspora. And so if it is such an important thing, I would think that this thing would be budgeted for, because it is a is as it is a new unit and something that the premier is very proud and happy about. I just it does not make any sense that it would not be budgeted for. It does not make any sense that it would not be that it just wouldn't be there. I think JD had asked a question, and she asked why a digital archivist is going to New York. And I found digital archives on this website. Digital archives is there, but you can't find diaspora unit. And I am just trying to understand what is happening. We haven't heard also anything that was discussed. I don't understand why no. I don't understand how it is so quiet when it was such an important thing that they had to travel to New York to senior ministers and what is purported to be the head of the diaspora unit that cannot be found in the budgets, that nobody can say where the office is located. So it's just a strange circumstance. I don't want to do so much since I'm here and not actually on Navis, but I continue to ask the questions. I continue to try to get enlightened on what is happening. Before I go into the videos, I want to thank everybody who interacted last week. Y'all made me feel happy. That's how the vibe's supposed to be. So we could really have a conversation rather than just me tell you. So I was happy for that circumstance. Uh, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, as it gives us more reach, allows us to be able to do more things, and check out the other shows, that other offerings that we will have also on the network. Okay, looking for the first video here. Don't understand why I don't see this one. You know what? No, I'm not gonna start off with that. I found this thing about the history of SKN. So we're gonna start off with a little history, because I'm looking for something and I ain't see it. So this is from Arawak time. This is from way back time. A concise little history of St. Christopher Nevis. You go call this an icebreaker.
Before Europeans arrived to discover islands that already had people, St. Kitts and Nevis were home to the Arawaks, then the Igneri people, believed to have descended from the Arawak Indians. Then they were conquered and displaced by the Kalinago, skilled warriors and navigators who crossed the sea in canoes long before anybody had a compass, a map, or the patience. The islands had names, real names. St. Kitts was Liamiga, meaning fertile land. Nevis was Owali, meaning land of beautiful waters. Names chosen by the Kalinago, who actually lived here, which seems like a fair qualification. St. Kitts and
So, see, I don't get a little history there. Fertile land in a SK, and the man say, you go down a SK, you don't got to dig the far. You don't think go do too much, just show them you see them pan the ground, and they gonna come. So, SK return, SK retains their namesake. And Navy still, I mean, even in Nelson days, people came there for the for the water. So Nevis also still kind of retain some of the heritage there. And even though he fumbled the name, he can't say Wally, but that's the scheme so far right there.
Nevis, two small islands bravely floating in the Caribbean Sea, right between Antigua to the east and St. Eustatius to the northwest. During Columbus' second voyage, he saw the islands, wrote the name down, and kept moving. Sort of like window shopping, but for entire countries. When Columbus sailed by in 1493, he immediately started naming things. He named St. Kitts St. Christopher after the patron saint of travelers because nothing says safe voyage like naming entire islands after your guardian saint. And for Nevis, Columbus saw a white cloud resting on the peak and thought it looked like snow, real snow, in the Caribbean. So he named it Nuestra Señora de las Nieves, Our Lady of the Snows. Christopher Columbus never stepped one foot on the islands but marked them as discovered. In 1623, Englishman Thomas Warner landed with settlers, establishing the first permanent British colony in the Caribbean. But soon after, French settlers led by Pierre Belin des Nambuc arrived too. The two powers shared the island for a while. The Kalinago chief named Tegramonte had welcomed them at first, fed them, helped them, probably even pointed them to the bathroom. But then the colonists started building large estates and pretending they owned the place. Cut to the Kalinago leader sharpening a spear and saying, "These freeloaders gotta go." In 1626, the Kalinago decided it was time to wipe the settlers off the island. Honestly, fair, but the British and French found out and decided to make the first move. So they invited
Um, far as my understanding of the story, not just found out, the same lady they were been a peep. She went go inform by she people, and that's why the the massacre occurred the way how it did. I also feel like we get this story, but I never hear about the Nevis angle. I never hear about any of the Nevis Kalinagos. I think I heard that they were trying to get others from Dominica, which seemed very far when Nevis is right there. So I don't even know the level of occupation Nevis would have been from the stories.
the Kalinago leaders to a peace party, gave them food, gave them rum, waited until they were relaxed, then struck first, killing Tegramonte and his warriors, then slaughtering hundreds in their sleep. The following day, at a site now called Bloody Point with a ravine known as Bloody River, over 2,000 Caribs were massacred, so many were killed, the river was said to run red. And that's not a metaphor, that's history. After this event, the British attempt to expand their territory to Nevis. European settlement did not officially begin until 1628, when the British settled Nevis. Anthony Hilton moved from nearby St. Kitts following a murder plot against him. The Kalinago resisted bravely, but over time they were pushed out, killed, or captured. Then sugar happened. It made fortunes for Europe and misery for Africa.
Sometimes I just hear about Nevis having a maroon culture, particularly up Rollins. I'm still looking for definitive evidence of this, but it's something that I look out for. And this is the first time I'm hearing this little aspect here about Nevis. So I asked for it, and I get it.
Americans dragged across the Atlantic to work in chains. Over the next century, St. Kitts became the favorite thing to fight over. Britain, France, back to Britain. By 1776, St. Kitts had become the richest British colony in the Caribbean. Finally, in 1783, the Treaty of Paris handed St. Kitts to the British for good. But while European
So essentially, the ending of the American War for Independence also coincided with all of this. So everybody organized themselves. British, French, the rising of America with the same Treaty of Paris in 1783.
fought for land, Africans fought for freedom. These wars gave opportunities for large numbers of enslaved Africans to escape into the mountains, forming small maroon communities. St. Kitts and Nevis had repeated small revolts, often involving plantation workers rising against violent overseers. Smaller revolts included refusing to work, attacking overseers, setting plantation buildings on fire. In the 1730s, Nevis had several coordinated plans for rebellion, some discovered before they
No, with regards to these rebellions and nobodies. I know about one. I read one story about this man who lived Nevis, reach England, reach back at Nevis, and poison off some white, not in I was saying white overseers, the owners, poison them off, and one of them actually got away, even when they do the poisoning, ended up becoming free in the 1700s. So I know about a couple of this, and it's not. The people tend to say, "Oh, it's a docile place." No, you can't do people anything what you want and not expect resistance.
began. Fields burned, tools broke, and whispers of rebellion stirred the air. Though Nevis stayed British, the French tried to change that. In 1706, they attacked, looted, and left a mess. They didn't stay, perhaps because the goats chased them off. In Nevis, goats are kind of like unofficial mayors, always around, quietly judging, and never late. It's common to hear things like, "The goats were here before the road, we're just visiting." It was the enslaved Africans who held the French at bay by taking up arms to defend their families in the island. During the chaos,
One of the reasons why small islands don't have like big threats from great powers is that there was no particularly need to have Nevis. It could be a want, but it ain't a need. It's not a deep down desire. And also, in my recollection from an article I recently read about the 1706 raid, at this point in time, Nevis was trending downwards, as I said. So there really wasn't any need to hold on to Nevis at this particular moment in time.
hundreds of enslaved people escaped. Many fled into the mountains to join existing Maroon groups. This created the largest Maroon population Nevis ever had at one time. Because Nevis is small, colonial authorities feared Maroons even more than in St. Kitts or Jamaica. The government passed harsher runaway laws, rewards for capturing Maroons, permission to kill resisting Maroons on sight, militia patrols into mountain areas. By the mid-17th century, most Maroon camps were destroyed. Survivors were killed, re-enslaved, or transported to other islands. Then came hurricanes, earthquakes, droughts, and even volcanic rumblings. The land trembled, but the people held on. On Nevis, the first English town was called Jamestown. It was perfectly located by the sea, which was the problem. In 1690, a massive earthquake hit the island, the ground shook, buildings wobbled like goats on a coconut tree, and the coastline suddenly remembered it had somewhere else to be. Then came the tsunami, a wall of water that treated Jamestown like a misplaced hat. By the time the sea calmed down, Jamestown had sunk. The quake struck with such force that the entire town was destroyed and parts of it slid into the sea. To this day, divers and archaeologists still report remnants offshore. And in the 1750s, Nevis produced one of history's biggest names, Alexander Hamilton, born right here in Charlestown, a founding father of the United States. He didn't know it yet, but this small island boy would someday write, argue, and debate his way into the history books. Hamilton spent much of his childhood between Nevis and St. Croix. Speaking on the founding father of the United States, when the American colonies won independence in 1776, Nevis celebrated for about 5 minutes. Then someone asked, "So, who's bringing the food?" Before America's independence, Nevis relied on American colonies for food. After America won their independence, Britain changed the trade rules and suddenly the ships stopped coming. What followed was the Nevisian starvation crisis. People ate whatever they could find, roots, wild fruit, anything that wasn't nailed down. Between 1776 and 1783, when food supplies failed to arrive due to the North American Rebellion, about 300 to 400 enslaved Nevisians are recorded to have starved to death. St. Kitts was affected, but not nearly as severely as
Them kind of famine is the reason why I don't understand the Maroon circumstance. If if there was so much food up in the mountain, how was there a famine? When you are telling me that there were multiple villages and so up in the mountainside, that's part of where my confusion comes from.
Nevis, and historians have identified very clear reasons why Nevis suffered a famine while St. Kitts did not reach the same crisis level. St. Kitts had a larger, more diverse economy. Compared to Nevis, St. Kitts had more plantations, bigger farms, larger internal markets, more inter-island connections. This allowed St. Kitts to import food from Antigua. Barbados and St. Eustatius produced small amounts of provisions locally by and bartered during shortages. Nevis had fewer ships, fewer buyers, fewer suppliers. By 1800s, the abolition movement in Britain was going strong. In 1834, slavery ended, but real freedom, that was delayed to 1838. No land, no pay, no choice, just the same field without the chains.
Okay, I want to say something. I don't even know if you're going to discuss this, but I want to say something about emancipation. There's many times I've heard people recently, and they're speaking and they're saying, we have to celebrate Emancipation Day because the slaves and them celebrated Emancipation Day. No, please understand. When slavery ended, there was still like a post slavery. It's not like they ended today and then there was like, okay, tomorrow everybody got rights. No, that's definitely not what happened. I would love to know when the first carnival was kept. And also, just because it happened in one island don't necessarily mean that it happened all over at one time. That's not the scenario. So we got to stop fool ourselves into feeling like, well, people were in bondage and then they say freedom and you had freedom. That's not how this thing works. They basically re-enslave you right afterwards. One thing I was reading was that they say, well, you need a 7 year grace period to learn how to be a human being, so that then after that time, you could go and be a free person. So it is a false equivalence to say that people just went and celebrated immediately. That's not how freedom was achieved. is a process that took, I would say, more than 50 years, closer to 100 years um, to properly be put into effect. If you think about St. Kitts and Nevis specifically, slavery ended supposedly in 1834, and there was not adult suffrage, which is voting, until 1952. That's nearly 120 years. So don't feel like, well, carnival and everything just change overnight. That's not how it operated in practice.
When slavery ended in the 1830s, the riches dried up, sugar declined, jobs vanished, hunger rose. Some left for better lives. Freedom brought new struggles. With few rights and poor pay, many workers turned to
I would also dispute that in terms of the witches had already been drying up. That was one of the reasons why there was the need to end slavery. So, for example, the sugar cane boom, they learned how to synthesize sugar in Germany from beets and other produce. And so the cane sugar, it was not as valuable as before.
again to resistance, this time with strikes, work refusals, and subtle sabotage. In 1876, the people demanded food, land, and fair pay. The government responded with bullets instead of bread. Then in 1883, Britain glued St. Kitts to Nevis and Anguilla. None of them asked for it, but that never stopped colonial planners. Slavery was gone, but the plantation system stuck around like a bad smell. Wages were low, land was scarce, and the rich still ran the show. Free in name, not so free in practice. In 1935, workers had enough. Protests exploded at Buckley's estate, demanding better pay and human dignity. 3 were killed, many wounded, but the people's voices were louder than ever before. What followed was hard economic times. Many families left Nevis in the 1950s due to a mix of economic hardship, lack of opportunity, and the pull of better wages abroad even, a pattern seen across many small Caribbean islands after colonial rule began to loosen post-World War II. The British government encouraged Caribbean labor migration to help rebuild the country. This wave became known as the Windrush generation. The U.S. and U.S. Virgin Islands also attracted Nevisians for work in construction, tourism, and domestic labor. Some left behind farmland, others left behind grandmothers. The goats, well, they stayed. Someone had to watch the yams. Out of the ashes came leaders, unions, and movements. St. Kitts and Nevis found its voice, and it wouldn't shut up. One of those voices was Robert Bradshaw, a former sugar worker turned union leader, turned statesman, and proud owner of the most serious mustache in Caribbean politics. When Bradshaw spoke, people listened, and the mustache made sure of it. In 1967, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla became an associated state, one step below independence, almost there. Just had to sort out some family drama. Anguilla wasn't feeling it. They walked out of the union like someone leaving a group dance rehearsal. By 1980, it was official. They were out. With Anguilla gone and the people united, the island marched forward. Independence was no longer a dream, it was a date. On September 19, 1983, St. Kitts and Nevis became a twin island federation, sovereign nation. After centuries of struggle, these 2 islands stood tall, scarred, proud, and finally free. Even though bound by geography and a flag, St. Kitts and Nevis haven't always seen eye to eye since independence in 1983. Nevis has tugged gently and sometimes not so gently.
This man even got on the so-called Nevis flag. If Nevis really had to do a flag, I don't see why that little piece up in the corner would be there. But it is what it is.
Toward going its own way. Joseph Parry and others would later become prominent in Nevis's push for autonomy. In 1998, the island held a referendum to separate. 62% said yes, but the Constitution required 2/3, just a few more votes, and Nevis might have flown solo, and so the rope remains. One side says unity, the other says autonomy, and the goat, well, the goat's still chewing on the paperwork. St. Kitts and Nevis had been colonized, conquered, whipped, starved, flooded, and ignored, but it never gave up, and it never will.
One of the amazing things about Nevis is that as much as NRP was the we're gonna do secession party, the concerned citizens movement came in with the same level of energy, and they are the only one who actually had a referendum. Well, I don't think it was available to. No. And NRP could have do it too, but NRP lost the lost the momentum of that when they joined the federal government. But the concerned citizens movement is the only party from Nevis to have actually held a referendum, to have actually started secession. And what strikes me is, as equally as I say, the NRP kind of doesn't have uh, a function, since the aim of the party was to seek secession. I could kind of equally say the same thing for the concerned citizens movement. I think right now is the furthest they have ever been since basically Matt Brown joined the party. It is the furthest they have ever been from any kind of secession circumstances. He originated the Charter Card, so he got them in with Team Unity, and he loves the Labour Party as long as they sign off on loans. Anyway, the next thing that I want to speak about is an alternative. I have heard the NRP refer to Daly's plan as something that they would do on the south, the southern coast of Nevis. I would look at it slightly differently, and my plan would involve solar energy. So we're gonna watch this video so you can see um closer to how I would approach it. Because I think Dr. Daly plan was basically to connect it. The main thing about the plan is to build a road. I think you gotta do a little bit more than build a road to make behind you viable. So this is my perspective.
If you look at satellite images of the Gobi Desert or Inner Mongolia, you will see huge fields of solar panels and long rows of wind turbines. Some of these projects stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Together, they produce electricity on the same scale as large coal power regions. China plans more than 450 gigawatts of wind and solar bases in its deserts by 2030. To understand this number, consider that 450 gigawatts is more than the total electricity capacity of many developed countries. A single large desert energy base in China can power several million homes. But deserts are harsh environments. They have sandstorms, extreme temperatures, and limited water for cleaning solar panels. Wind turbines must handle.
The reason why I choose the desert as the background for this is because over there has been described as a wasteland. So some of the features is definitely not as bad as this. Mongolia is one of the driest places on earth. However, the general principles could still be applied overall.
Strong seasonal winds. Transmission lines must cross mountains and remote land. So a natural question comes up. Why did China choose deserts for such a large share of its energy plan? And how does this system actually work? China chose deserts because of three simple reasons: land, resources, and distance from cities. China's electricity demand is very large. The country produces more than 8,000 terawatt hours of electricity each year, which is about one-third of global power generation. Heavy industry, railways, data centers, and large cities all need steady electricity. Coastal provinces like Guangdong, Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai have dense populations but limited land for large energy projects. In contrast, Western China has vast open regions. The Gobi Desert alone stretches across several provinces. Large areas in Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, Qinghai, and Gansu have low population density and flat terrain. Building gigawatt-scale solar farms in those regions is easier than finding similar land near major cities. These deserts also have strong natural resources. Northwest China receives some of the highest solar radiation levels in Asia. Many desert regions record over 2,000 kilowatt hours per square meter per year of solar energy. Wind speeds in Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang are steady.
Once again, it's not on the same scale. However, I feel like a lot of the same features that he discussed, low population, wide spaces of land, all of these are applicable to the southeast coast. The need to create energy. My other thing that I would add is it's actually you don't have to do all of this stuff like as in building transmission lines that gonna go over mountains. You actually have a large constituency which is very near to this, so you could feed into that and lessen the burden. So I feel like it is a way to electrify the country, to utilize the sunshine. As I say, it seems like a viable alternative that is fixing issues that are currently being faced by the population.
And strong for much of the year. This combination makes deserts suitable for both solar and wind power. But there is another reason too. Large energy projects often face local resistance when they are close to cities. Noise, land use, and visual impact can delay projects. Remote desert regions reduce these conflicts and allow construction on a much larger scale. However, China's desert power projects did not start as isolated solar farms. Around 2021, China announced a plan to build massive wind and solar bases across desert areas in Inner Mongolia, Gansu, Qinghai, Ningxia, and Xinjiang. The first phase targeted about 100 gigawatts of capacity. Later phases expanded the goal to more than 450 gigawatts by 2030. These projects are developed by large state-owned energy companies such as China Three Gorges Corporation, China Energy Investment Corporation, and regional power groups. The electricity is then transmitted through networks operated by State Grid Corporation of China and other grid companies. A desert solar base looks simple from far away. You see rows of panels across flat land. But each project is a complex industrial system that must work in extreme conditions. A typical gigawatt-scale solar farm in northwest China uses several million photovoltaic panels. These panels sit on steel mounting structures fixed deep into the ground to resist sandstorms and strong winds. Engineers angle the panels to capture the most sunlight across the year, and they leave space between rows to reduce shadowing and allow maintenance vehicles to pass. Many desert projects also use tracking systems. These systems slowly rotate the panels to follow the sun from east to west. Tracking can increase output by 15 to 20% compared to fixed panels, which matters when projects operate at a very large scale. Dust is one of the biggest problems. Sand reduces panel efficiency and can lower power output by more than 20% if it is not cleaned regularly. Some projects use robotic dry cleaning systems that move across panel rows at night. These robots remove dust without using large amounts of water, which is important in arid regions. Other sites schedule limited water cleaning when conditions require it. Heat is another challenge. Desert temperatures can pass 45 degrees Celsius in summer.
With regards to the maintenance of the panels, I feel like this addresses another issue, which is the creation of jobs. So there's definitely gonna be people who need to go out there and who need to understand the maintenance of these panels. So this is addressing the creation of energy, the electrifying of the grid. This is addressing the creation of jobs. This is making what is viewed as, just like I think the intent of the Destiny Project is. This is creating a situation where the land, even if you want to call it barren, it is being useful to the nation. So I feel like I'm just presenting this as a possible alternative. And this is also to show you I have been critical of persons who blanket just say that they don't want the project without offering an alternative. I do not feel like that is a reasonable position. I had tried to describe this in my head, but now I'm showing you the visual so you could see and you could understand why I feel like this would be a reasonable path to pursue.
Heat reduces panel efficiency and can damage electrical equipment. Engineers install cooling systems, ventilation for inverters, and heat-resistant materials to keep the system stable. Each solar base also includes substations and control centers. Electricity from the panels flows through inverters that convert direct current into alternating current. Transformers then raise the voltage before sending electricity into long-distance transmission lines. Construction speed is often faster than people expect. China has built some multi-gigawatt solar bases in 1 to 2 years. Large manufacturing capacity for panels, steel structures, and inverters allows quick delivery of equipment. Standardized designs also reduce planning time. For comparison, similar projects in the United States or Europe often take longer because of land approvals, environmental reviews, and grid connection delays. In China, centralized planning allows several projects to move forward at the same time in one region. However, solar is only one part of these desert energy bases. Solar power works during the day. Wind power often increases at night or in winter. China combines both in desert regions to keep electricity production more stable across the year. Inner Mongolia, Xinjiang, and Gansu have some of the strongest onshore wind resources in Asia. Many locations record average wind speeds above 7 meters per second at turbine height. Flat open land allows large turbine spacing without obstacles that disturb airflow. Low population density also reduces land conflicts. China has installed more than 400 gigawatts of wind capacity, which is the largest in the world. A large share of that capacity sits in northern and western provinces. Some wind bases in Inner Mongolia already reach tens of gigawatts. These are not single farms. They are clusters of many projects connected to the same transmission network. Modern turbines in these regions often exceed 5 megawatts per unit. China often builds hybrid projects that combine wind, solar, and battery storage in one location. During sunny hours, solar panels supply power while wind turbines may produce less. At night, wind output can continue while solar stops. Batteries store extra electricity during peak production and release it later when demand rises. Texas in the United States also uses large wind farms on open land, but many
The evolution of battery technology is key to everything that is going on. Before then, you had to basically have the power with you going on. Like basically, when the sun goes down, you cut off from that. Same thing with the wind. But as you say now when you reach excess capacity, you have the ability to store that in batteries and to redistribute that capacity on a day that is cloudy, in circumstances where the wind is blowing less. And the overall focus of all of this is to diversify from the fossil fuels. If we do not have geothermal, you will still need some kind of fossil fuel, but the overall goal of all of this is to lower the exposure to external shocks so that you don't have to look at your electricity bill, which is another issue that is being faced, the cost of living. So this all of this is in an effort to lower the cost of living, uh, improve, provide employment, to make sure that land that is viewed as barren is no productive land. And I also, they might not mention it here, but there are also possible applications that could affect agriculture as
The
well.
American wind regions are closer to cities than China's desert bases. China's challenge is larger because electricity must travel much farther. This leads to the most important part of the system. Building energy in the desert is only half the job. China still needs to send that power thousands of kilometers to factories and homes on the East Coast. That requires a transmission network on a scale rarely seen before. Traditional power lines lose more electricity over long distances. When power travels hundreds of kilometers, losses increase and voltage drops. China needed lines that could carry electricity more than 2,000 kilometers from Xinjiang or Inner Mongolia to cities like Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou. To do this, China invested heavily in ultra-high voltage transmission technology. These lines operate at 1,000 kilovolts and even higher levels. Higher voltage means lower current for the same power, which reduces energy loss. Some UHV lines in China
Uh, just to break down what maybe he's saying there. The further you got to push electricity, like for example, we're saying we're gonna be selling electricity to other islands, to Sinkids, to neighboring islands. Is the less power gonna reach from the source to where the placer output is. So that's where you need special transmission lines that's specially made to handle these high power outputs. So that even for the geothermal, this is where you're gonna need to install to make it serious. Which is why I say if you're gonna be making any kind of leaps with regards to renewable energy, it does not seem possible that you are going to be doing it without the assistance of China or Chinese companies. I can't see how it works out. Not Taiwan, China. Don't know.
stretch more than 3,000 kilometers. Transmission losses can stay near 5% over very long distances, which is much lower than older systems. Each line can carry power equal to several large power plants. Projects like the Xinjiang to Anhui UHV line and Inner Mongolia to Shandong connections link desert energy bases directly to eastern industrial regions. These lines cross mountains, rivers, and remote land. China's grid companies coordinate these projects at a national level. State Grid Corporation of China operates most of the network in the north and east. China's Southern Power Grid manages southern regions. Central planning allows transmission lines and power plants to open around the same time. Other countries face more difficulty with similar projects. The United States has strong renewable resources in states like Wyoming and New Mexico, but new transmission lines often take many years because they cross multiple state jurisdictions. In Europe, cross-border grid expansion requires agreements between several countries. China still faces challenges. Long-distance lines must balance supply and demand across regions. If too much power enters the grid at once, operators must reduce output at wind or solar farms. Engineers solve this with better forecasting, storage systems, and flexible demand management. These transmission networks turned China's deserts into energy exporters. Power generated in empty land now runs factories, trains, and homes thousands of kilometers away. However, China's desert energy program does not affect China alone. It is already shaping global energy markets, equipment prices, and project planning in many countries. China produces most of the world's solar panels and a large share of wind turbine components. Large domestic demand from desert energy bases helped Chinese factories scale up production. Higher production lowered equipment costs worldwide. Over the past 15 years, the price of solar modules has dropped by more than 80%. Wind turbine costs also fell as manufacturing increased. This cost decline allowed other countries to build renewable projects at lower prices. India built large solar parks in Rajasthan. Saudi Arabia started multi-gigawatt solar projects in desert regions. The United States expanded solar farms in Nevada, Arizona, and Texas. China's experience also shows the importance of grid planning. Renewable energy alone is not enough. Transmission networks and storage must grow at the same time. Countries that build solar without grid upgrades often face curtailment, where power plants reduce output because the grid cannot absorb more electricity.
It is very important to note. I was listening to the premier speak about the approach that was taken to water, and he described the approach as first you put in the tanks, you upgrade your ability to hold water, you upgrade the distribution network, and finally, after that, that's when you drill for the water. Similarly, when it comes to electricity, it's the same kind of thing that you're gonna have to do. When you look at the fact that we are saying that we are gonna be doing geothermal drilling this year, the question I ask myself is, where is this energy gonna go? From the persons who approached water so competently and first built up the capacity. Where is this new geothermal energy gonna go? What is the capacity that we have built to store this new energy? What about upgrades to the grid? Since there's gonna be more power, has there been sufficient upgrades, or is this something that we are also gonna need? I think that these are things that we're gonna need, and I think that the cost for them is gonna be near $100 million, but we shall see.
There is also a competition aspect. Countries want secure energy supply without heavy fuel imports. Desert solar and wind offer domestic energy in regions with strong sunlight and wind. China's early investment gives it an advantage in technology manufacturing, construction experience, and project financing. But some analysts raise concerns. Large renewable expansion can create oversupply in certain regions. Grid operators must balance supply carefully. Equipment manufacturing also depends on mining for metals like copper, lithium, and rare earth elements. This creates new supply chain pressures. Even with these concerns, China's desert projects show a model for large-scale renewable development. They combine generation, transmission, and storage in one coordinated plan. Many countries are studying this approach while adapting it to their own geography and grid systems.
And this is all I ask. This is all I ask. Look at it, see if there is any kind of sense, and if you could pick out something that you like out there, then do that. But at the very least, I am giving you my perspective on an alternative use for the land over on the south coast. It could be, I think that there's more that could also be done, but I feel like this addresses a lot of major problems. And I also say that there is an agricultural aspect to this that could be even more beneficial to persons who have animal over there, in addition to the creation of uh the increase of that business.
Next question is whether this plan will keep working as projects grow larger. China still faces several technical and economic challenges ahead. China's deserts were once seen as empty land with little economic value. Today, they are becoming one of the main sources of electricity for the country's cities and industries. If you look at satellite images over the next decade, you will likely see more solar fields and wind farms appearing in remote regions. The question for the future is not only how big these projects can become, but how reliably they can power modern economies. So what do you think? Can desert solar and wind really replace coal at a national scale? And can other countries build transmission networks as large as China's? Or will politics and land limits slow them down? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
The next thing that we're going to look at is a continuation of the solar revolution. He's going to describe some of the ways that the technology has been better. As I tell you, I want you a fully fleshed out alternative. I think even right now, I heard the premier asking, what are your alternatives? I'm not necessarily even against the destiny thing. I would have liked some information so I could have passed it on to people who are much more intelligent at the financial side than me. But this is an alternative use of the land over there that could also incorporate it and make it useful for divisions.
When a heat wave hits the UK, we often talk about the urgent need for climate action and how governments aren't doing enough. That, of course, remains true. But I thought I'd focus on a more positive side of sunny days today, which is that solar power is absolutely booming. Globally, the amount of energy produced by solar increased by 30% last year, 30% in 1 year. That's incredible. And this is not an outlier for the technology. So the amount of electricity generated by solar has jumped on average 27% every year for a full decade. Solar power has now overtaken wind and nuclear, or almost nuclear, it's now sort of matching in terms of energy generation. And this increase was enough to meet the entire growth of electricity demand, meaning for the first time outside of global recessions, fossil fuel use for electricity production fell. It's fantastic. Now, of course, if you are a regular viewer of this show, you won't be surprised to learn this transition is mainly being driven in one country, China. This chart shows how much solar capacity has been added to the global grid each year since 2022.
Once again, there is no circumstance where you're going to be speaking about renewable energy and be able to skip out China, at least if you're doing it on the very highest of levels. They're going to come up at some point in time.
You can see it's going up every year. The dark green shows solar capacity added in China. The light green shows solar capacity added everywhere else. Now, as you can see, for the past 3 years, the dark green block fills up most of the bar. So China has installed more solar capacity in each of the past 3 years than the rest of the world combined, which is incredible. Very, very important. Before you say, but China is also burning loads of coal. Yes, they are, but they're moving in the right direction. So China's exponential growth over the past 4 decades was powered by coal and other fossil fuels. This line shows that rise continuing in the last 10 years. However, since 2023, so you see it's constantly going up, so they were using more and more fossil fuels over this period of time. Since 2023, for the first time ever, the amount of electricity generated by fossil fuels in China has flatlined. So China's carbon emissions have peaked. Still very high, but they've peaked. And this is the key bit. That's not because China's energy production has stopped growing. That's still going up. So you want that, especially if you've still got a lot of poor people. You want your energy to grow. You want more electricity. But what's happening in China is that extra electricity is coming from solar. And that's a story that now applies on a global level. So this chart shows the cumulative change in electricity demand globally from the year 2000. As you can see, it's always going up fairly linearly, actually. It's a sort of straight line. That's good. We want more people to have access to electricity. That's a major sign of development. Great. Line goes up is good. However, until 2024, more electricity meant more fossil fuel use. But, and this is the good news, for the first time last year, all the extra demand was met by renewables, mostly wind and solar. So then the amount of electricity used still going up, but the amount of fossil fuels used to create electricity is now level. Of course, another problem you might have now, none of this solves solar's big problem, which is intermittency. So solar might be good as part of an energy system with nuclear, gas, or coal as its base load, so it's backup. You need that in case the sun isn't shining, for example, at night. So often in energy systems at the moment, solar will sort of put money into the grid in the day, and then at night it will be a gas turbine that powers the electricity grid, which is a big problem for solar. However, there's also good news on that front. So the Financial Times has run an article on the dawn of 24/7 solar power. They say this dawn has been driven by falling battery costs. The article cites Bloomberg research showing the cost of utility-scale batteries has more than halved since 2022. That's in 3 years, it has halved. That's incredible. With 24-hour solar plants now being built in Abu Dhabi, Australia, and even India. These are countries with lots of sun. The caveat is that if the sun doesn't come out for like a few days, then you will need more batteries than is plausible. So we probably, in a country like our own, we will still need a different source of baseload power. But the big problem with solar was always batteries being quite expensive. Batteries are now cheap. Banseka, can people enjoy the sun this weekend without feeling a nagging sense of impending doom?
I think so. I think this is a good story, I think, isn't it? There's a lot of doom and gloom, obviously, that often accompanies sort of climate change stories, which from a behavioural change perspective can make people just shut off, can't they? But this is a good news story. I was quite happy to read it when I saw the script today. I think it's interesting to see that some of these key technologies are now going to become perhaps more economically competitive. So there's a kind of good economic argument for that as well. Decarbonisation is not something kind of hypothetical. It's something that that is possible. And perhaps it's a sign that the energy system is beginning to change in some aspects structurally. Don't want to be complacent about that because, of course, there are lots of vested interests in keeping things exactly the way that they are. There's lots of vested interests, of course, still in fossil fuels and oil and all of that stuff as well. But it's good to see that economically some of these things actually are quite viable. The China example is really interesting as well, isn't it? China contains multitudes. On the one hand, it's still emitting a lot, but it's also leading the charge for green energy, which is really interesting. Strikes me that that's a talking point really for stronger industrial policy. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that's how they've done it, right? The ability to be able to do that really large scale, long-term planning that I said I was envious of earlier in the in the previous section. Green technology is part of that China dream, I guess, right? Which is really interesting. So things like coordinated investment, subsidized production, accepting sort of perhaps lower short-term profitability for longer-term profitability in the long run once this becomes more and more profitable is really exciting. And, for energy to be treated, I suppose, energy transition, to be treated as a national strategic priority, which it looks like the Chinese government is doing, the CCP is doing, is very exciting. It's a bit of a, what would you call it? They're sort of leading the way in that respect, despite the negative things that we often hear about China being the worst emitter. They are leading a pathway perhaps for something a bit different. Whether we can do that here, there's many different things. The way the Chinese economy works, you know that better than me, of course, having been there yourself recently.
I'm an expert. I've been there for 2 weeks.
Well, you had a good chat with Jostein Hager and people like that as well, haven't you? And so I'm sure there's huge structural differences between the way their economy works and ours. I don't know if you've got any ideas about to what extent we can actually learn from in terms of green technology and implementing it here.
It's worse that our emissions are now lower than China. Yeah. So we have done quite well. Like we have halved our emissions. So
is that like per? How is that measured, by the way? Like because obviously we're a much smaller
per capita. So our emissions have halved per capita. China's have just leveled off. But obviously the example that China gives to the world is one that you can have extraordinarily fast development while using an expanding number of renewables. Because obviously, it's difficult for like a sub-Saharan African country or India to sort of take inspiration from Britain because we already developed and actually now we're stagnating. So there's an argument that, our route to carbon neutrality hasn't been very attractive for other countries to follow because electricity did get more expensive and we're actually using less electricity every year. Whereas China is showing that you can have super fast development, you can have a consistent increase in the quality of life, all while going green. So I think
I think that that's like a major aspect of this. There is no country in the world who is going as fast as China. And yet still, there's no country who is growing their reliability and renewables as fast as China. And so it is important to understand you could develop fast with renewables. Is in the same old thing of fossil fuels, gas is what is going to determine how fast you could rise.
Probably are more, even though we've done a decent job at reducing carbon emissions, like halving them in 20 years, not too shabby. I think there's probably fewer countries looking at Britain and saying, I want to be like Britain. And there are lots of countries looking at China and thinking, I want to be like China. Also, obviously, we don't export really cheap solar panels to the rest of the world, and China does. So there is a big sense in which China is enabling the green transition just in a way more significant way than anyone else in the world.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like, even though we've done a good job with some aspects of the emission stuff, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's a part of our economy. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know what our economy is in many ways.
Well, we mainly have a services-based economy, so we don't produce very much.
No.
But I mean, on the industrial side, I mean, I presume the green stuff is. I mean, the government is constantly talking about like green industrial policy. Our wind turbine factory closed, so yeah, maybe we don't make that much.
No.
We just stopped using coal.
That's the next step, I think. For
and
us
now
to...
I think a majority of our energy comes from renewables most of the time. So that's fine. Go sunbathe, feel good, wear suntan lotion, skin cancer. Actually, a depressing story we could have chosen today is skin cancer rates are going up.
Oh no.
But I thought I'd go for solar power instead of that. You can set the mood by doing the news, and I chose solar panel instead of skin cancer. I hope you appreciate that.
How much should a nation pay its leader? And who decides when the number becomes too much? Across the Caribbean, political pay has triggered protests, criticism, transparency concerns, and...
Okay, so this is Pocket Watching Caribbean Leader Edition. So this is going to be talking about the highest paid officials, leaders in the Caribbean.
Fierce national debates. In this video, we'll count down 13 leaders whose salaries reveal far more than simple numbers. Some figures are surprisingly low, others sparked major backlash, and a few remain clouded in uncertainty. The deeper this ranking goes, the more controversial it becomes. But one final decision completely transformed the top spot, and many people still disagree with it today. Number 13, the President of Cuba. Coming in at number 13 is a figure that forces us to rethink what a salary even means for a head of state. Miguel Diaz-Canel, the President of Cuba. Pinning down a comparable salary for the Cuban president is practically impossible. The country operates under a state-controlled economic system where official salaries are exceptionally low by any international standard. Based on extrapolations from official wage scales, President Diaz-Canel's official cash salary is estimated to be only a few thousand US dollars per year. By the numbers, this makes him the lowest paid leader in the hemisphere. However, that figure is deeply misleading on its own. In Cuba's system, the presidency comes with massive non-monetary benefits provided by the state. These include housing, transportation, security, food, and access to goods and services not available to the general public. The real compensation isn't in the paycheck, but in the comprehensive state support, making a direct salary comparison with other leaders almost meaningless. The low official salary is a feature of a political ideology that on paper rejects personal wealth from public office. Number 12, the Transitional Presidential Council of Haiti. At number 12, we find another uniquely complex situation, born from a profound national crisis: the leadership of Haiti. With no single elected president, the country is currently governed by a 9-member Transitional Presidential Council, TPC. Determining a salary here is incredibly difficult. Historically, the official salary for a Haitian president has been very low, often estimated at under $5,000 per year, reflecting the nation's immense economic challenges.
$5,000 a year. $5,000 a year. How big a junior ministers are made that day in 2 months? Wow.
The current situation with the TPC, however, is shrouded in controversy. While official stipends aren't clearly defined, the arrangement has drawn intense scrutiny. Reports from a human rights network have alleged that the total cost for each of the 9 council members could be as high as $63,000 to $65,000 per month, when a web of allowances for expenses, security, and even spouses is factored in. It is critical to state that these are unverified allegations from disputed reports, not official figures. The existence of such claims speaks to the atmosphere of distrust and the severe lack of financial transparency in Haiti's transitional government. For our countdown, the official salary remains one of the lowest, but the reality is far murkier. Number 11. The Prime Minister of Dominica. Coming in at number 11 is a leader often cited as the lowest paid head of government in the English-speaking Caribbean, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit.
Listen, if you run thief, you got to at least do like Roosevelt and don't take no set of money. So, if this is facts, I respect it.
Of Dominica. Based on the most recent and consistently reported data, Prime Minister Skerrit's annual salary is approximately $58,500 Eastern Caribbean dollars. This converts to an estimated $21,596 US dollars per year. Let's put that in perspective. Dominica, the nature isle of the Caribbean, has a population of about 72,000 and an economy built on tourism and agriculture. Prime Minister Skerrit has been in office since 2004, making him one of the region's longest-serving leaders.
That's less than $6,000 a month, though? That's more like $5,000 a month. Really?
His modest salary is a frequent topic of discussion. Supporters say it shows a commitment to public service in a small island nation with limited resources. However, it's also been controversial. In late 2023, discussions about a salary increase for parliamentarians drew public criticism. Opponents argue that while the base salary is low, the overall compensation, including state-funded living expenses, must be considered. Number 10. The Prime Minister of Grenada. At number 10, we travel to the Isle of Spice, Grenada, led by Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell. Determining the precise current salary here is also challenging, as data often relies on parliamentary records that aren't frequently updated. However, based on the best available estimates from regional analyses, the salary is pegged at an estimated $34,136 US dollars per year. Grenada is a nation of about 113,000 people, with an economy built on tourism and spice exports. Prime Minister Mitchell, a lawyer, came to power in 2022. His estimated salary places him in the lower tier of Caribbean leaders' pay. This figure is interesting, given that for years, Grenadian MPs were considered among the lowest paid in the region. In 2023, the government moved to increase salaries for parliamentarians, a decision that sparked public debate about its timing and appropriateness, but was aimed at bringing compensation more in line with the responsibilities of the office. Number 9. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Moving up to number 9, we arrive in St. Lucia, home to the iconic Pitons, and led by Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre. As with many others on this list, an exact 2026 salary isn't a simple public record. The most reliable estimates, based on a combination of historical
So I'm going to apologize. I think that a couple of them who I spotted in this are not the current prime minister. So I think the next person who that going to happen with is St. Vincent. I think they're going to still have Ralph. But nonetheless, all of this is recent, so I don't think the salary would be that dramatically different since the elections were this year.
data and regional comparisons place Prime Minister Pierre's annual salary at approximately $50,498. St. Lucia has a population of around 180,000 and an economy reliant on tourism and agriculture. Philip J. Pierre, an economist, took office in 2021. His salary represents a middle ground in the Caribbean, a substantial sum compared to the average income, but not reaching the heights we'll see later. A recurring debate in St. Lucia has been that senior civil servants sometimes earned more than government ministers, creating an imbalance. Prime Minister Pierre's salary reflects this ongoing balancing act, offering compensation to attract qualified people without creating a huge gap between the political class and the people they serve. Number 8. The Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. At number 8, we have the leader of the twin island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Once again, this figure is an estimate based on the best, though not always recent, information. Prime Minister Brown's annual salary is widely reported to be around 150,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars, which translates to approximately
None of these people is better compensated than the premier as of yet. I'm only talking about one salary from the premier. We're talking about the premier money as premier. If we have to add in as leader of the opposition, we definitely got a lot further to go.
approximately $55,500. Antigua and Barbuda is home to about 98,000 people, with an economy heavily dependent on tourism. Prime Minister Brown, a former banker in office since 2014, has publicly stated that he and his ministers were underpaid compared to their regional counterparts. He has argued for a mature discussion on the topic, noting the sacrifices that come with the job. This highlights a persistent challenge for many Caribbean nations: how to set fair compensation for leaders when the public is often facing its own economic hardships. Number 7. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our countdown brings us to number 7, and the multi-island nation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Its leader is the longest-serving head of government in the Caribbean community, CARICOM, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. Finding a definitive current salary requires piecing together a history of public records. Based on figures cited in regional reports and previous parliamentary records, his annual salary is estimated to be approximately $57,840. This can be tricky, as some reports might include allowances. To counter claims of a secret pay raise back in 2012, the Prime Minister himself released his payslips, which showed a basic monthly salary of $11,704 Eastern Caribbean dollars plus allowances. Today's estimate seems like a plausible evolution from those earlier figures, reflecting modest
That's not enough to be the premier.
public service increases over more than a decade.
We at number
Prime
6.
Minister Gonsalves has been in power since 2001, and his salary has generally followed the trends of the public service. Number 6. The Prime Minister of the Bahamas. Kicking off the top half is the leader of the Bahamas, Prime Minister Philip Davis. Here, the numbers take a noticeable leap. Unlike many nations on our list, the Prime Minister's salary in the Bahamas is clearly defined in public law. According to the Parliamentarians' Salaries and Allowances Act, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas earns an annual salary of $86,000. The Bahamian dollar is pegged 1-to-1 with the US dollar, so this is a direct figure.
So if this person had access or cared about the fact that Nevis had a local government, then the premier would fit in. What is it? Number 7. You could call it Kaibi Ralph. This is the first person who beat the salary for the premier Nevis. But as I say, if you're counting the fact that in Nevis you could be into, still got work to the body.
The Bahamas is one of the wealthiest countries in the Caribbean, with an economy dominated by tourism and international finance. This relative wealth is reflected in the compensation for its public officials. Prime Minister Philip Davis, a lawyer, took office in 2021. While his $86,000 salary is the base pay for the top job, it's part of a larger structure where cabinet ministers and members of parliament also receive clearly defined salaries. Number 5. The Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Coming in at number 5 is the leader of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Prime Minister Terence Drew. His compensation package is firmly in the upper tier. Based on available reports and salary scales, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis earns a salary estimated to be around $96,971 per year. St. Kitts and Nevis is the smallest sovereign state in the Western Hemisphere, with just over 47,000 citizens. So how does the leader of one of the smallest nations on our list command one of the highest salaries? The answer lies in the country's unique economic model. The nation has long run a successful citizenship by investment program, which generates substantial revenue. This has allowed the government to fund social programs, infrastructure, and higher public sector salaries without relying on a personal income tax. That's right, the Prime Minister's high base salary has no income tax taken out, making the compensation, in purely financial terms, one of the most attractive in the region. Number 4.
If you combine the fact that a Nevis premier could also be in the federal parliament, the prime minister does make less money than the premier. And if the premier is in the cabinet, he definitely making more money than the prime minister. This is something that I would want to hear how St. Kitts people feel about that particular perspective. But if you put in the premier compensation, the premier could be a solid number 5. It would definitely be Dr. Joe. But Dr. Joe is in the top 5, and you could see how come he smile like us. $100,000 a year, you got to smile.
The Prime Minister of Barbados. At number 4, we have Barbados, led by one of the most internationally recognized figures in the region, Prime Minister Mia Mottley. The salary for the Prime Minister of Barbados is set by official government orders. The most consistently reported recent figure is approximately $213,334 Barbadian dollars per year. With the Barbadian dollar pegged to the US dollar at 2-to-1, this converts to a substantial $106,667 US dollars annually. Barbados, with a population of about 282,000, has one of the most stable and prosperous economies in the Caribbean. In 2021, it transitioned to a parliamentary republic. Mia Mottley, as Prime Minister, remains the head of government. A powerful global voice on climate change and financial reform, her 6-figure salary reflects Barbados' status as a higher income nation within the Caribbean, placing her in a small group of regional leaders whose official pay exceeds the $100,000 mark. Number 3. The President of the Dominican Republic. In the number 3 spot is the leader of the Caribbean's largest economy, the Dominican Republic's President, Luis Abinader. The Dominican Republic, with a population of over 11 million, has a large and diverse economy. The official salary for the president has been reported as 450,000 Dominican pesos per month, which, depending on the exchange rate, translates to an annual salary in the range of 97,000 to 120,000 US dollars. However, the story of President Abinader's salary is unique. When he took office in 2020, Abinader, a wealthy businessman, pledged to donate his entire presidential salary to social causes. Reports confirm this practice has continued, with his entire 2024 salary, for instance, being donated to various nonprofit and social organizations. So, while his official salary is one of the highest in the Caribbean, his actual take-home pay from the government is, by his own choice, zero. Number 2. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Our runner-up, holding the second highest position on our salary countdown, is the Prime Minister of the dynamic dual-island nation of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamla Persad Bissessar. This exceptionally high salary is the direct result of a recent and highly debated recommendation from the country's powerful and independent Salaries Review Commission, or SRC. This body is constitutionally mandated to review and set the salaries for a wide range of senior public officials, including judges, legislators, and the Prime Minister. In late 2024, the SRC tabled a report proposing a significant and substantial pay hike for these officials, arguing for the need to maintain competitive compensation. The recommendations remain in effect under the administration of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Under this updated salary structure, the Prime Minister's monthly salary stands at 87,847 Trinidad and Tobago dollars. When calculated over a full year, this works out to a commanding annual salary of approximately $155,440 US dollars, making her one of the highest paid leaders in the entire hemisphere. The justification for such a figure is rooted in the nation's unique economic profile. Trinidad and Tobago is an undisputed economic powerhouse in the Caribbean. Its immense wealth, built not on tourism or agriculture, but on its massive reserves of oil and natural gas. This hydrocarbon-based economy has historically provided the state with revenues that allow for higher levels of public spending and compensation. As Prime Minister, Kamla Persad Bissessar now receives this salary under the framework established by the Independent Salaries Review Commission, whose recommendations continue to shape compensation for senior public officials. Nevertheless, the pay increase has remained a subject of public debate, with powerful trade unions and political critics arguing that the timing was inappropriate amid broader economic challenges. This contentious situation places the Prime Minister of the region's energy giant as the second highest paid leader, with a salary that directly reflects the nation's immense oil and gas fortunes. Number 1. The Prime Minister of Jamaica. And now, after our extensive journey across the Caribbean, we have finally arrived at the top of the mountain. Holding the title of the highest paid head of government among the independent Caribbean nations we are covering is the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. This salary has been the focal point of one of the most intense, widespread, and passionate public debates on political pay in recent Caribbean history. Following a comprehensive and long overdue public sector compensation review aimed at restructuring and streamlining government pay, the salary for the office of the Prime Minister was set to increase dramatically. As of April 1st, 2024, the new annual basic salary was officially established at 28.6 million Jamaican dollars. At current exchange rates, this converts to an astonishing, headline-grabbing $181,998 US dollars. When these massive salary increases, which in some cases for parliamentarians represented a jump of over 200%, were first announced in May of 2023, the public backlash was nothing short of ferocious. It dominated news cycles, talk radio, and social media for weeks. However, the story does not end there. In a stunning development in February 2026, the Prime Minister's office issued a statement announcing that after a period of careful review and consideration, the Prime Minister would now accept the full established salary of 28.6 million JMD. The official justification referenced his own words from 2023, where he had suggested that a new mandate may give an opportunity to reconsider. This decision has, predictably, reignited the controversy and sparked a fresh wave of national debate. But regardless of the politics, the numbers are now clear and undeniable.
And Your Holiness is a criminal for taking the salary in Jamaica. He ain't that good. He definitely ain't that good to be taking any kind of money there. I don't believe that. Anyway, some people would know. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Whenever this community faces matters of great significance, let us ensure that every head of government makes every effort to be present for our retreats and caucuses to resolve matters in-house.
Traded a quiet call to one another for public quarrels.
Trust is strengthened. Misunderstandings are resolved.
We have traded the revered maturity of regional politics for a mimicry of 280 characters on social media.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like the CARICOM family is back together. Or should I say, somewhat back together. I did sense some moments of tension at the opening ceremony of the CARICOM 51st Heads of Government meeting in St. Lucia, and it certainly was a joy to see Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissesa at the conference among her colleagues, smiling diplomatically. So it looks like we're getting it together. As you know, in the past couple of months, Kamla Persad-Bissesa has had a very open falling out with the CARICOM regional bloc, and she took the fight to social media, letting the region know that she is not comfortable with the current operations of CARICOM. She called them out publicly. Of course, you know how Caribbean women are when they're not satisfied with something. They're going to let you know the extent of their dissatisfaction, and that she did. Now, at the time, many people were wondering if Kamla would be present at this heads of government meeting, because she did say that she would not be supporting the regional bloc unless her demands were met. So maybe it is that her turning up at the conference is an indication that the heads of government have met with her and are trying to see where she's not satisfied. Now, while it was certainly great to see Persad-Bissesa at the conference, I couldn't help but notice the shady moments that were thrown her way during some of the speeches that were given during the opening ceremony. The keynote speaker, for example, Raheen Augustine Joseph, who is a Rhodes Scholar of
So, some people don't get up to speed, but Dr. Joe has handed over leadership of CARICOM to the Prime Minister, I think, of St. Lucia. And after I done said that Congress engaged in bad politics in how he treated Kamla, Dr. Joe apparently decided, you know what, Congress, I could do worse politics than you. I could pick a bigger fight with Trinidad and Tobago for singles than you. So apparently he had a little confusion. So this is what we did in that one, yes or so.
the Caribbean. He urged the leaders to pick up the phone and talk to each other instead of taking their personal fights to social media. And I couldn't help but think that he was talking to the great Persad-Bissesa, because the only squabble that we know about in CARICOM in recent months is the one that she had where she stated
When she talking about the great Kamala, I don't understand what's so great about Kamala business now. Come on now. What has she done that is so great? I don't. We ain't gonna point too much on it. Trinidad is a great country. Kamala, she's part of Trinidad. That's it.
that she was dissatisfied with the operations of CARICOM. And another shady moment came when the outgoing chairman of CARICOM spoke, and he's the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, if you remember, he was the one who was in office when Prasad Bisesa aired her grouses on social media. And during his speech, he reiterated that conflict among CARICOM leaders should be handled with grace and behind closed doors. He also emphasized that leaders should make sure they're attending CARICOM meetings. And if you remember, one of the major problems between Prasad Bisesa and the regional bloc was that she was not in attendance at major sessions where key decisions were made, but later said that she had a problem with the decisions that were made. So him reiterating that, I thought it was quite shady. And the cameraman just panned to Prasad Bisesa while the outgoing chairman was speaking. I thought that was another shady moment. But do you want to know the most interesting thing that I noted? The outgoing chairman reaffirmed and honored the CARICOM General Secretary, the same person that Prasad Bisesa said she had a problem with. Not the person, the appointment of this person. And the outgoing chairman certainly reaffirmed her, saying he was proud of her, he was proud of her work. And to me, that just means we are not going to remove you from the position at the request of Trinidad and Tobago. Guys, you have to listen to this one and tell me if I am going off the rails here or...
If that there are sarcasm, that sarcasm there is more elite than mine. Game recognized game, but that would be universal or multiversal sarcasm. If that was should be done.
if hits were thrown Kamla Prasad's way. But to be honest, it does look like she's ready to cooperate with her regional brothers and sisters. And as you know, she did pick up a lot of criticism from around the region, as many advocates of regional integration said she was overreacting. But to me, a member country's complaints are just that, and they should be taken seriously. I don't know, guys. I'm going to invite you to listen to these clips. I've picked them out. I've put them all together so you can be educated and you can join in on the discussion below. Let me know if you think these comments were aimed at the great Kamla Prasad Bisesa and whether you agree.
No. Nah, that's not sarcasm. She really feel like Kamala is great. And ain't no way. She ain't even great. She ain't even great in Trinidad. Or she gonna be great in the Caribbean.
Agree with what the leaders were saying.
Traded a quiet call to one another for public quarrels. We have traded the revered maturity and of regional politics for a mimicry of 280 characters on social media.
Okay, this person here is also making the same mistake that I saw in St. Kitts. If in the same way he can be out here calling for us, let we talk to each other. Let we talk to each other on a quiet phone call. And then the first time when you get to talk to the woman in your country, you gonna talk about she publicly? Nah. Not good at politics. Canvas 2.0.
And what is worse is that the young children and the young people of this region are watching, and they're confused as to whether they're watching Love Island USA or they're watching the regional integration. We must ensure that we only focus and argue about ideas that bring us forward, as opposed to agonizing about every single thing which is wrong with this integration movement. We all live in families. We are all allowed to disagree without being disagreeable. What is not, however, within the spirit of this family is waking up tomorrow morning, cursing your sisters and brother in the far lands with your neighbors and your friends, not dealing with the differences of this movement within house, and attempting to break the toys or our institutions that our godfathers and parents have left for us, as opposed to trying to remodel it in times of malfunction. For what family, friends, in a moment of the slightest disagreement, runs to the courthouse to deny their blood relationship? And I must tell you that the family member that this region wants to remember is not the auntie that comes to the reunion and brings up her family gossip from 20 years ago, but the one who is focused on building the future of that family.
But permit me, therefore, to offer one humble recommendation. Whenever this community faces matters of great significance, let us ensure that every head of government makes every effort to be present for our retreats and caucuses to resolve matters in-house. Those sessions remain among CARICOM's greatest strengths. Away from cameras and prepared statements, colleagues speak candidly. Trust is strengthened. Misunderstandings are resolved. Consensus is built. No newspaper headline has ever solved a disagreement among Caribbean leaders. They have done the opposite.
Listen. Kamala right, who will she hype and that shit? If you said that the conversation need to happen behind closed doors, I do not understand how you're going to get up on the podium in the open door to tell Kamala that. And all of this is incorrect. You know. The cameraman wrong, Dr. Joe wrong, my guy from St. Lucia, you are incorrect and not using politics effectively. Why is St. Kitts and Nevis supposed to be fighting with Trinidad? What we ever get out of that? There's nothing to gain. So, I can't see it.
I wish to express my sincere appreciation to our Secretary General, Dr. Carla Barnett and her team. Madam Secretary General, thank you for your professionalism, your integrity, and your steadfast commitment to this community. Throughout my tenure, whenever I called, you answered. Whenever support was required, you and your team responded with diligence, competence, and excellence. You have served and continue to serve CARICOM with distinction. You have understood the importance of preserving the impartiality of the Secretariat while faithfully implementing the decisions of heads of government. Whenever this community
I feel like, one the reason why it's good to talk behind closed door too, because you could genuinely give Kamala some bad order behind closed door. And you could tell you what I want to say behind closed door. It's different. You could fight. But when you got to do all of them kind of things there and just embarrass her, I just can't see that as good politics. Although I know that there's some labor kiss asses talking about you, Terrence Robert in here. Yeah, this person who apparently concerned about all my labor takes. So that person will just kiss Dr. Joe ass, not care what happen. But this is not good politics. Just can't be. Let me go here about these what they call TCN, third country nationals. I hear about the confusion taking place because we hear more from other islands, particularly Antigua, Jamaica slightly, than you hear from your own set of leaders. So let me hear from them so you can find out in your country.
So, transition to Jamaica, some third country nationals from the United States.
One of the concerns that a lot of people had was where we're going to put them. You know, we're not in a space, all our facilities are overcrowded. How are we going to care and accommodate these people?
The number is 25. It's an understanding, and at no time will the number exceed 25 because we have the right to refuse anyone at any time. And both parties can terminate the entire agreement without any long-term notice.
What we hear from the Deputy Prime Minister is that these...
They want to make this thing about anybody could terminate. That is the strength, but I guess, but it is also the weakness of an MOU. There is no legally binding agreement. They agree that they're talking about talking, but there are no legal obligations to the one. There is nothing that I say could do to breach any of the terms because there are no legal obligations. That being the case, if For example, you don't receive payment for the acceptance of these TCNs. You don't have any legal recourse, and you don't have an agreement. You have an MOU. In this particular scenario, a real contract or agreement would have been better. But the governments prefer to do the MOU so that they could say that they get out of it. It would have been better to do a clear and direct deal in your terms and sign it than explaining the obvious. There are no legal obligations under MOU. That's what I've been saying all the time. That's why when I look at MOUs, unless it is with the People's Republic of China, you could wipe your ass with it. That's the value of the paper you got.
Persons are free to move around. If they seek asylum, they can stay, and then we work out how the money part go.
You know, there's a popular saying that goes, the more things change, the more they remain the same. And the older I get, the more I realize that there is no truer statement. Because I am going to just delve a little bit into the annals of Jamaica, a little bit into our history, and show you how this US deportee deal, the deal where they're trying to send their undesirables to our country or through our country, I'm going to show you how it is connected to history. I'm going to show you how the people who rule America and these quote-unquote great powers of the world, they are not inventing new schemes and new ways to enslave us, but they are using the same playbooks of old. They are using playbooks that they used centuries ago against many peoples of the world, many kingdoms of the world. And those playbooks, those strategies worked in bringing down entire kingdoms. And they used them against our little nation, Jamaica. I'm going to show you. Now, when the British captured Jamaica from the Spanish in 1655, one of the main ways that they used to increase the island's white population was to transport their undesirables, their prisoners, people that they didn't want in their country, to our country. They also did it to other countries. They transported their undesirables to America. They transported them to Australia, to other countries in the Caribbean. But Jamaica was one of their main points of drop-off for their
Oh my God, we got to hear Jamaican talk about how they were the real sufferers. When they been want to drop them off at Jamaica, they especially do it. How long we contextualize, because I have a feeling this gonna get emotional.
undesirables. Does that sound familiar to you? Remember, if we are descendants of the great African peoples who survived the slave trade, who do you think the rulers of America?
You see what happened now? This kind of program, I say, the great African people who survived the slave trade. But listen, over here we were strong, but I'm not trying to knock my own ancestors, but I'm telling you, if we was great, we would not have been in slavery. Think about that aspect. We are the survivors of the strongest set of our ancestors. But I don't feel like it's no greatness is why we survived that. It was kind of brute strength, kind of genes, kind of luck. But greatness, if we had greatness, no, when they came to bargain, we would have been selling something else.
America descended from? This playbook is available to them. The American government wanting to drop off their undesirables in our country and supposedly forcing us behind the scenes. It is not anything unusual. It is something very normal and something that they have done or their ancestors have done many times in the past.
I hope you catch this like reframe there. When he realizes, he said, no, no, America not do it. So he had to switch quick and say, is the American ancestor, the ancestors of the Americans. So I guess we're going back to England.
Choosing to go back in the distant past, but you can even go back to 2015 when Britain tried to build a prison in Jamaica and tried to get us to take undesirables, right? Undesirables including people who would have gone to England and served in their military and would have probably come back with mental illness issues and would probably be giving trouble in their society.
I'm not going to use the same logic that is being weaponized against me. So I've been around Europeans and then watch me and then say, he probably are this kind of person and that kind of person. Now the same thing might be here, yes or so. And they probably have mental disorders and you don't know, but you probably want to think the worst of the situation. And this is not an apology for Europeans. It ain't. It really ain't. I guess I'm just trying to get the calibration done the right way.
They decided that they didn't want those people and they were proposing to build a prison in our country to accept all these individuals. And you know what? It would start out that way, but it wouldn't end up that way. God knows where we would end up. God knows who they would try to send if they were to say, we built that prison and you have to take anybody that he send. Because one thing that we do know about the powers of the world, they do not always agree to the very memoranda or the very contracts that they sign. And I'm going to get to that in another part of the video, but I just wanted you to see that this is not new. They used our country as a penal colony, especially between the years 1639 and 1653 when they fought to annex Scotland and Ireland. A lot of prisoners of those wars, they call them the Wars of Three Kingdoms, they exiled to Jamaica. Those were undesirables and regular common prisoners as well in their society that they did not want. Instead of hanging them, they would send them to countries around the world or their colonies. And one of those colonies was our country. So they were not good enough for your country, but you could send them to our country. At that time, our people were not in charge. But I'm just showing you that the playbook remains.
If we go back to the time that this person is speaking about, post Christopher Columbus, obviously, the person she's speaking about specifically are the indentured servants who, well, some of them, because there was a law in England that the prisoners and debtors as well. So if you owe money, you have the ability to come over in the new world, work for X amount of years, and gain your freedom. So these same people who she talking about as undesirables, actually, they did not treat them in the same manner that they treated slaves, as much as you call them undesirable. And at the end of their tenure, they got land, they got money, they had the ability to move up in society. It was not that they were just like picking out the worst set of people. It's that the English wanted to settle the colonies that they had in the Western Hemisphere. And so the persons, pick up people of means, just like right now, and carry them along. But persons who couldn't do any better, yeah, they sent them over. I don't think she reached Scotland yet.
Does that sound similar to the US deportee deal where they're trying to force us to accept these undesirables. I'm just drawing conclusions, and everyone, this information is not difficult to find. Gone are the days when information is locked away in books, in libraries that we cannot access certain days of the week or certain times of the day. You can Google this information and it will be at your fingertips, at the tip of your brain cells in seconds. But I'm just drawing conclusions here. Follow me now. So we established that the playbook remains the same, and all these people do, they are preservers of history, and they know how to go back into the annals and pull plays that have succeeded in the past and reuse them, especially against people who do not keep good records of history. And I don't think that present day Jamaicans are on the ball as we used to be back in the day. We are bright, we are educated, we are developed, but we are not as in tune with history.
I think that she a choice that Jamaican people don't, and by extension, Caribbean people don't. But one of the things I will say about this is, even if you are not a good recorder of history, or your society does not have a proper record of history, then one of the things that is important that you do is you look at other people and how would they handle a situation. There is no situation, or very hardly any situation, where you will be encountering this thing for the first time. You are truly a pioneer and the first person dealing with this issue. Even if you are the first person to deal with an issue, you may end up looking back and find out, man, this thing, somebody attempted to deal with it before. So even though we don't know, even though you don't know your own entire history, you could look at other persons and how they interact with Europeans, and how, as she's saying, how different tactics were used, and you could see the effects, and you could see how to resist so that you do not fall prey to those same tactics in the future. It's as Malcolm X said, if you do not know your history, you will be doomed to repeat it.
So they can run a number of plays our way, and they can seemingly win us. They can even win us, not seemingly. They can win us. They have a greater understanding of the plays that have worked in the past and what they can run again. So we're done with that. The next thing is that who is to guarantee that the promises that they have made, right? The promises that they have made that they are going to fund the initial stay of the deportees, and that it will only be 25 per trip to Jamaica, and that they're going to give us all these things, and that, who is to say that they will stand true to those commitments that they are making? In this memorandum of understanding that the Jamaican government has allegedly received, that they refuse to make public, that we have not seen. The Minister of National Security is telling us that the American government will pay initial costs. It's
also kind of crazy when we look at different governments not making it public. But then I'm supposed to allege that America is forcing this upon us. If they're forcing it, why the governments are not putting this out there so that they could see, people could see that they're being compelled? There's only one prime minister I heard make such a statement, and that was Captain Brown. Everybody else roll over. So it's difficult to say you are being forced if who you supposed to be your teammate is not giving you any evidence of such.
The TCNs will not stay beyond a certain time. They're only supposed to transit through Jamaica to their home countries. And there are a lot of commitments. They're also saying that the Jamaican government will have the right to stop the program if it starts to go contrary to the memorandum of understanding that they have signed. But who is to say that we will be able to do those things if the MOU is breached. And I'm going to show you in history that these powers of the world, like America, like Great Britain, and they are the same people. The same people. Do not think that these people are different. They are the same people. I'm going to show you that these powers of the world have never really honored commitments, especially when they make them to our people. I'm going to use Jamaica as an example, because if I don't use Jamaica as an example, you will not believe me. Watch this now. So we all know that when the British took over Jamaica, there were some Africans that rebelled and resisted and revolted, and those Africans were never enslaved. They were Maroons. And there was a certain point in Jamaica in the 1700s where two dominant groups of Maroons emerged. Maroons are people who escaped British rule and fled to the mountainous areas of Jamaica, and they established communities. They fortified those communities, and they resisted the British to the point where they are studied around the world. Those are Maroons. A few of those communities are still present today, and you can take a trip there, you can go and see. So by the 1730s, there were two main groups of Maroons resisting British rule in Jamaica. There were the Windward Maroons, and they were in the eastern side of Jamaica, and they were led by Nanny, who is a national hero of Jamaica. And then there were the Leeward Maroons, and they were in the western part of Jamaica, and they were led by Codjo, right? And they resisted the British very, very well. Both groups, the British and the Maroons, were just at war. I think at one point they fought for 80 years. The British could not take it anymore because the Maroons were using guerrilla warfare. The Maroons were using just the spirit of rebellion and revolt and resistance and the passion. They wore out the British militia. They wore out the enslavers. They tried many times, and in some cases they succeeded in demolishing their communities, but the Maroons would retreat further into the interior, into the mountainous parts of Jamaica, and they would resist. They didn't have the weapons, and they didn't have the technology that the British would have had, but they had a passion. They had a knowledge that all men should be free, and they had the guerrilla warfare and the strength that they got from the motherland, which was West Africa, and they used it to put up a resistance like Beres Hammond. If you know that song where Beres says putting up a resistance, they put up a resistance that, as I said, is studied around the world today. So they fought for a number of years, and here's the point I'm getting to. There was a point where both the Maroons and the British got tired of fighting, and so they wanted to make peace. And so the British came up with the idea that they would sign peace treaties with the Maroons and give them access and let them be free in the parts of the island where they were already established, and that, you know, the Maroons would not bother them on the plains where they had their plantations. In those agreements were also deals that if slaves from the plantations were to escape, the Maroons would take them back to the British. That was what they came up with. I'm just telling the story. So the British signed peace treaties with the Maroons. They signed a peace treaty in 1739 and they signed one in 1740. There may even have been others. But do you think that the British obeyed those treaties that they signed? No, the British did not obey them, and that is why it is giving me this type of horrid nostalgia. I'm having flashbacks, and I wasn't even there, because I am saying this memorandum of understanding that the United States has come up with, and they're trying to sign it with Jamaica. Do you think that they will always abide by this memorandum of understanding? If we go back to history, I would say no. There is no guarantee that they will stand by their words. The British did not obey those treaties that they signed with the Maroons. History says to the British, those treaties were never meant to be followed, because if they were going to expand their plantation settlements, they needed more and more acres of land, right? So they signed these treaties with the Maroons knowing that they never planned on obeying them. They never planned on sticking to their words. In the 1790s, right, the Maroons and the British began fighting again. And in response, the British deported a number of Windward Maroons who lived between Trelawney Town and the Cockpit Country, first to Nova Scotia in Canada and then to Sierra Leone, which was a new colony they had established in Africa. They deported the rebellious, the strong, the passionate fighters out of the country, even though they had told the Maroons that, hey, you can have this part of the land, we're not going to fight you, we surrender, we are at peace. They went against their words and they denied the treaties that they had signed in 1739 and 1740. In 1842, I'm reading something here. In 1842, 8 years after slavery was abolished in Jamaica as well as the entire British Empire, the British formally annulled both treaties of 1739. And the only thing that saved the Maroons was that eventually sugar and the plantation system started to decline rapidly in the British West Indies. And so they were able to maintain their semi-autonomy, their semi-independent state of being. That's what kind of saved those communities a bit and why we're able to see remnants of.
I'm gonna let this woman here stop talking. First of all, you hear about the brilliant guerrilla warfare and all them things there, but then here we're going on in the late part. It was only due to luck that they were able to survive after 1834. I'm just skeptical. It's a misunderstanding of history. It is a conflation of what happened to fit a narrative. And unfortunately, this happens all throughout the Caribbean. Every single day, people bring up all kind of big words and try to fit all kind of things in, to make them seem like they are the victim and there is some kind of major loss that is occurring, some kind of major victimization. Everybody against this, that, and the other thing. And it is all in an attempt to manipulate people to get them to do or to take certain actions or to think in a particular manner. Heat up to yesterday, kind of leave these things alone until somebody trouble me and ask me what me think. But I just basically play this video so that you could understand that there are circumstances where people put in two truth and a lie, and they do that to get you to go in a particular direction by appealing to your emotions. And even when you look at the Destiny Project, it's happening on both sides. When you think about some of the people who oppose it, and also when you think about some of the people who want the project, there is always some kind of emotional appeals that go on. And I would encourage people to be sober and check where how something make you feel before. Well, before you make your final decision, as the initial gut reaction is important. But you also go check with that there and look at bigger picture, look at how things gonna be affected in order to properly gauge and know how something is gonna operate, how it's gonna affect you specifically. Anyway, I guess I shall go and watch the second part of the United States versus Belgium. I see America was able to tie the game for all of 30 seconds, and Belgium was back running in the back of the net again. So we're gonna see if the game is as good as the one this afternoon. Tune in to the topics. I realize the man them have been active. As I said, sometimes you got 2 topics a week. I see Mr. Parry was on last week. I don't know when last the premiere has been on. And I'm uncertain who's gonna be on tomorrow evening. But nonetheless, you should head over there and do the same thing as you do here, like, share, subscribe, talk to people about it, have conversations. Tell them if that's so sensible or not. Either way, have an opinion, be able to gauge something, be able to express yourself, and tune in to them guys tomorrow and see what they're doing. So who they're gonna be discussing with and what the topic will be. I thank everybody for their contributions, for their participation, and I hope everybody is safe and blessed. I will see you guys next week with quality time with Alan Paul. Let's see if I can find my outro. Indeed, it's time to leave.
Quality time. Quality time. Quality time. Quality time. Quality time. Quality time. Every Monday, pon the line. I'll bring the facts tonight. So the people read between the lines. Rent life. Everybody tune in live. Global topics, deep analysis, audience interaction every night. I'll on the live stream sharp, breaking down the news and the world affairs part. From the islands to the White House, every headline get dissected right now. No noise, no gimme talk. Pure facts when I start walk. Economics, politics, 2 Caribbean lens on the global view. Shut a light up, non-stop. Viewers calling, comments drop.